Welcome everybody. It's Rev. We are doing a math video, game theory, whatever you want to call it, about War League win rates. And really what got me going on this was hearing a little factoid that Roger Federer only wins 54% of his individual points over his whole career, which is just insane. I mean, considering that he's the best tennis player ever, it got me thinking about how that relates to something where there's a large sample of individual matches or games and whatnot. So we'll get into this, and really what I'm getting at here is what the relationship would be in War League between a team's War win rate. And if you're unfamiliar with War League, we play for several weeks. In this case, we're doing 15 weeks because that was Edison War League. Um, and what relationship your war win rate, which is a 5v5 of 5 players. You need to win 3 out of 5 at least to win the war. You do that 15 times over 15 weeks. And what the relationship of that would be between a team's match win rate and then their individual game win rate. And I think there are some interesting conclusions on this as well. So we'll jump into it um, and kind of go over what the conclusion is at the end. So, the first step is setting up the problem and then solving for some of the variables. So we need to start here, which is, in the best of 3 match, a player wins if they win at least 2 out of 3 games. That's for individual games in a match, which then is a 5v5 in a war. So P sub M is the match win probability. P sub G is your individual game probability. So this gets a little bit tricky because with individual games, individual matches, you can sometimes only play twice and you can sometimes play 3 times. So a match could go, you win the first one, win the second one, and then that's it. Or you could win the first one, lose the second one, and win the third one. So there's sometimes 2 games, there's sometimes 3 games, which is a little bit of a bitch. So we have to expand the equation, and I'm not going to get into too deep into the math here just because I don't really think that's frankly important unless you wanted to check it. It's mostly what the conclusion is, which I'll talk about at the end of the video. So then we need to determine the required match win rate for a 65% war win rate, since we already found the equation for the relationship between matches and games. So uh, that's the formula. Um, so we do get to use a binomial here just because wars, there is a set number of people that are playing each week. It's going to be 5v5, so there's less variability. Um, and we're going to solve for P sub M at this point. And this is just what this sum is expanded. This is, if you win 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5, so on and so forth. So this is with the binomial coefficients, the equation. And we want this to equal 0.65 or 65%. And if you're wondering where that number comes from, I figured it would be best to start with kind of what your minimum war win rate would need to be to make playoffs, which is about 10 out of 15 weeks. So if you win 10 out of 15 weeks, you should probably make playoffs. And that's about a 66% war win rate over that season. So we just made it 65 for simplicity's sake. So to solve for this, we need to figure out the match win rate. And this is where things get even a little bit hairier. It's easier, if you have a solver or you're good with Python and you can like write a script to just solve this function or this equation. But I'll kind of go over this very quickly because what we're doing is testing to find, roughly 0.65. So we plug in all these numbers and then we sum them up and this is what we get. So 0.7486, that's too high. We wanted to solve for roughly 65%. We do it again with a lower number. We plug them in. We're going to add them up. We get 0.69, still too high. We do it again. And then this is still too high again. I'm not going to go over each and every one of these numbers in order not to bore you. But finally, we get something that's pretty darn close. So we get a solver or a solution that's 0.645, which is very, very close. And what that essentially means is your match win rate needs to be about 58.5% to get a war win rate of about 65%. So what that means is you don't need to win 65% of your matches to have a 65% war win rate. You only need to win 58% of your matches to get a 65% war win rate, which is pretty interesting, I think. So 58, 59%. See how that translates and kind of flows up to the individual wars. Then we're going to take it a step further, and we're going to figure out the equation to find out, in the event that you want a match win rate of about 58.5%, what would your game win rate need to be? Um, each individual game you're playing for those matches. So we go through the same exercise. We use this equation and we're trying to solve for something as close as possible to make this equation equal 0.585 for P sub G. So we're solving for P sub G and we'll want P sub M to equal 58.5 or 0.585. So we do it too high, do it too high, getting closer, and then I'll hide the result here, but we get closer, and then we more or less get to this, which is roughly 0.57. So what that kind of means for us is that to achieve a 65% war win rate, we need to win approximately 57.5% of our games, which corresponds to a match win rate of about 59%. So I'll just go over that one more time. If we want to get 65% win rate in our wars, which means we win roughly 10 out of 15 weeks, our match win rate needs to be 59%, and our individual game win rate needs to be 57.5%. So I think that's really interesting, considering those really marginal small advantages add up. And I think kind of where I'm going with this, and this is going to be more of the discussion and what I kind of want to talk about here is how those really small advantages compound in a team setting like this, just because you're playing so many more games. And when I think about War League and the decks that people play, I just don't see any reason to play decks that are sub 50% win rate decks. I mean, at least from the statistics last season, both Vayu and Blackwings are, I think, like roughly 55% or something win rate decks. So you're already kind of getting like, well, that's the match win rate. So you're already getting like almost half your required win rate, like right there. And then the other half is going to be, luck, of course, and technical play and deck building choices. But you really don't have any option to make bad deck building choices or bad deck choices. It just punishes you too hard when every little percentage point that you're foregoing um, has that much of an effect on your war win rate. The other interesting takeaway with this is these numbers are flipped on their head if you do them negatively. So let's just say that if you had a sub 50% game win rate, like let's say it's 48%. I haven't done the math on this, but let's say your game win rate is 48%. That means your match win rate is going to be even lower. So it would probably be like 45% or something like that. And then your war win rate would be like 40%. So the numbers compound both positively and negatively. And that's why I think like, if you're playing War League and, you know, you just want to have fun, that's totally fine as long as your team's on board with that. But like, I feel like there are just other avenues to have fun. So uh, you should take it seriously. Your teams are relying on you. I do think that there isn't much room for not only the suboptimal play and things like that, but really small mistakes that fuck up your win percentage, even just by like a percent or two. And that could be playing, a shitty rogue deck. That could be playing a really unoptimized build of even a good deck. That could be siding 1 to 2 cards incorrectly. These really small percentages at the individual game level matter a lot. And they just completely flow up to the top of your team's win rate. And those mistakes do compound. So I think it's just interesting to think about. Um, let me know what you guys think. And I've said this before, but I think just decreasing your deck size with draw cards, it gets you probably the other half of the way there. Like just doing that, if you like have just decent tight technical play, because I mean, if you think about it, like if you run a deck with 3 draw cards, like let's just say it's 3 Upstart Goblin, that decreases your deck size by like 7.5%. And that, of course, doesn't mean you instantly get a 7.5% higher win rate. There is a cost to that. It's not a perfect card, but if you're seeing 7.5% more bomb cards and more broken bullshit like Deck Dev, Oppression, Dark Arm, Substitoad, like Caius Brain, like that kind of shit return, like that's going to affect your win rate like by at least a handful of a percent over the full season. So it's those really small things, and I think that is the future of War League, which is that if teams just play really hyper optimized shit and they have like really standardized good side deck plans, uh, it's like a guaranteed playoff for you. I mean, I just don't see how you could miss unless you're just totally fucking up and throwing on the gameplay perspective. Because again, you can only control for what you know in advance, and what you know in advance is what decks you're going to play, if they're good or not, your siding patterns, your general siding patterns at least, and that's kind of it. Um, you can't really control for much else. The technical plays only going to be good or bad on the spot. You can't guarantee every game you play is going to be 100% good. Good players have more better games than bad games, but that's what it is. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you think. I'm out.